Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode 1006. Goodness gracious, this is for April 28th, 2025. This is the pre show, the magical part of this program where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we say very outrageous things. It's the Monday Night Weather Party. We're live. And for those looking for the actual content of the produced program, move the slider over about 10 minutes. But hey, you might miss some good stuff here. This is where we could go totally unhinged. So, got some active weather up north. In fact, let's take a look real quick. What do you say? So, this is the radar coming out of the upper Midwest, La Crosse, Wisconsin. And, it's a situation where a lot of people are screaming bust already, which is just part of the game. It happens. But a lot of folks are seemingly not very happy because of the lack of tornadoes in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Apparently, they missed the storms without any rain. And again, we'll see what happens here. It looks like there's one tornado warning polygon in extreme southern Minnesota. And that line is coming into Rochester. And let's go down the line here. Let's look at what's happening in Iowa. We're live here at 6:51. And these storms look a little more cellular in nature, but they don't look overly impressive at this point. That thing looked pretty good for a few minutes there. Again, this is in northwestern Iowa. So anyway, we've got the chance of severe storms all the way down into Oklahoma. In fact, Rick Smith will not be on the show tonight because of the severe potential. So let's see what's happening down his way. And we've got severe storms that are developing over southwest Oklahoma. Not tornadic at this point, but there's a tornado watch for Oklahoma City. So I think Kim will be on tonight. We'll kind of talk with her about it, and hopefully James A. can join us. All right, enough of that. So let's start bringing in our people here. I totally forgot that. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in weather, I'll forget to bring in our people. But again, we'll keep a close eye on the radar while we bring in our guest. I think Bill Murray is out tonight. Bill apparently has a pub pub crawl and will not be joining us. And I think Jen is going to be leading our discussion this evening. So that's always good. Jen is a professional broadcaster. She's good. I am not. I've said this on here before. My first major in college was electrical engineering. And then I shifted over into meteorology, and I've never taken any classes in communication or writing or the things that we really need to know about it in our career, and I really regret that. But Jen is a professional broadcaster, so she will handle the show very well tonight. But I know that Rick Smith is out because of weather. Here comes Jen. So, John, you watching the storms up north?
Yeah. Hi, James. How are you?
Good. Oh, you got some headsets in tonight. Yes.
I just synced them. I didn't even think I could. This is a miracle.
It works. It works. Yes. Um, so let's see. Jen, are you there? Hello,
Um,
Jen.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Let's see if Fred, can you hear us? Are you there?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh man, this guy looks like he's in Leonard Skinner's basement here. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
kind of.
outstanding.
We probably have the walls painted a different color.
Welcome,
Are you a
Fred.
musician?
Yeah, that's my secondary hobby or third, whatever.
Wow. So what you got a band or what you got going on here?
Well, I played in the band for a lot of years when I was younger, and that kind of led me into my primary gig, which is I work for a manufacturing company that makes guitars and amplifiers and PA systems during the day. So my musical career led me there, but my my passion, one of my other passions, obviously, is flying. So that's the aviation, the hot air balloon stuff.
Awesome. Our youngest son is a music guy. He would tell you every kind of guitar back there when it was made, the whole thing. Me, I'm not a music guy. I played French horn in the high school band, and I was horrible. It was bad. I can't tell you how bad it was.
I played the
Um,
trumpet too, and I wasn't that good either. So I can relate.
yeah, it didn't work out very well for me. The only thing musically involved for me when I was growing up, I grew up literally playing rock and roll music in a radio station through high school and college. And so this is way before you were born, but this was back in the 1970s. So I played for 1/4 of my life up until the time I was 21, 22. I worked in a rock and roll radio station playing Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner, Marshall Tucker Band. It was very eclectic because after you play some of these rock songs, then you play Stevie Wonder, and then you play the Carpenters, and then you'd play the Guess Who, and then you'd play Leon Russell, and then you'd play Elton John. It was a very eclectic deal back then. And then finally, when FM kind of came into being, they developed the AOR format, album-oriented rock. So most of the rockers went to the FM side, and the AM kind of morphed into a pop, top 40 thing, which is what I did. But we still played a lot of heavier stuff. We were in a college town, so we played a lot of pretty deep album cuts, especially late at night. But that's the extent of my music, was playing them, not performing like you. I think we
Yeah,
should.
well, that's
I,
pretty
th- I
good.
th-
You definitely had the voice for it, and I'm sure you made more money than I did. So at the
No,
top,
no, 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 no. I was making $1.65 an hour. All right,
well,
but this is how inexpensive college was. I literally made $1.65 an hour, and it paid for college tuition. Now I had no expenses. I lived at home, but I mean, goodness, how times have changed.
that's
I would write out the check, and pay for tuition out of the little money I was making at that radio station, and it was a different world back then. And I got to television, and I was making $1.85 an hour, and I thought I was wealthy. Um, that was my first TV job, $1.85 an hour in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Um, and just so you'll know, Fred, we're streaming live on YouTube now. This is the pre-show. This won't be on the produced podcast. At
okay.
the top of the hour, we join a local television group where I am, and we'll start the produced show that goes on the podcast. And then most people listen. About 75% listen, 25% watch. So,
Well, good.
but
I don't have
we'd
to
like
look
to.
at my face then. That's
No,
fine.
no, no. Well, look at me. I mean, I got nothing here. I mean, it's like, but anyway, we always like to disclose to our guests that we are streaming live on the socials here. So,
Great.
and the whole thing stays on YouTube. Some people do watch, and some watch live, some watch later, but most people listen. We've been doing this for 19 years. So
Wow.
and most people that listen or watch this, they're total weather dweebs, geeks, nerds, dorks, weenies. We don't want Joe Q public watching this because this will make absolutely no sense to the general public.
Especially if I'm on the
Uh,
program. Yeah, that's
well,
true.
well, for any of us, it makes absolutely no sense. So James Adelot, and we got one of our Oklahoma correspondents here. Looks kind of quiet where you are, huh? Quiet so far.
Yeah, all is quiet except on the Western Front. Norman Zero Z sounding just came in and it is strongly capped. So I am encouraged that it's not going to make it at this current severity into central Oklahoma. We'll see what happens. Low level jet will kick up, photographs will enlarge, and probably right now it's just a bunch of splitting hailstorms out there. And I'm not sure that precip in those storms is actually reaching the ground. And I say that because there are so many chasers out there that I'm sure every speck of ground is covered.
Yeah, that's a definite possibility there. Um, yeah, and we're also, and let me welcome our television viewers. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you for joining us. It's Monday night. There is absolutely no weather issue here. So, let's quickly go up to the great Northland up here. They're taking some heat, man. The social. Well, I see some tornado. There's a tornado warning in Kansas, but
Oh,
we have no active warnings in Minnesota, and a lot of the TV Mets are under attack. Apparently, Minneapolis, St. Paul had zero rain, not a drop, after a hyped event for several days, and it's kind of underperforming so far. But I don't like calling an event a bust in the middle of the event, if you know what I mean. Let's wait till it's over and let's review this, and we'll take a look at it tomorrow morning. Yeah, we all listen. My middle name is Mistake. We're predicting the future. Predicting the future is hard. All right, enough of that. Let's get this thing started here. Let me record track number one, track number two, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
WeatherBrains, episode 1006. This is for the 28th of April, 2025. Getting set to cruise into May. Before you know it, meteorological summer will be here. But we are so glad you are with us. It is the Monday Night Weather Party. You know, most people listen to the show, but for those of you that listen, a lot of you don't know that you can actually watch this live. We record the show, and we are on YouTube, youtube.com/weatherbrains. If you'd like to watch it live, and it's kind of fun, we have a chat session. People kind of comment as we go along here, but we know that most of you listen, but whatever. Thanks for being here. So we've got some active weather tonight that is keeping some of our folks with their hands on the wheel tonight, including Rick Smith. And I see Kim just joined us. So, Kim, give us an update on the Oklahoma situation first, where you are. You're part of Oklahoma, and then we'll go to James.
Sure, yeah. Here in central Oklahoma, we're just watching what's blowing up down to our southwest. So things are really conditional here, and that's been the story all day as we've been watching each run of each convective model come in. But we could have some pretty good storms with big hail, big wind. There's an outside chance for tornadoes, but it's a ripe environment. And let me tell you, after the last couple weeks, we've had so much rain here that it's muggy. We're starting to feel really, really springy, really rainforest jungly, and that's the kind of thing that can get unstable, in a big way. So I think Oklahomans are feeling it. We've had a lot of rain with everything that's come through several ways of convection. Personally, what I'm most worried about, and I think our emergency managers are most worried about, is that rain. So we should be seeing several inches of rainfall from this once it congeals into a big convective complex. We could get several inches, 4 to 6 inches of rain up this way, possibly. And of course, it's been very flooded. More to southwest Oklahoma has had it even worse than us here in central Oklahoma, and they're in for a lot of rain tonight too. So I think the big message for everybody is to pay attention for the flood threat. If you do have to shelter, be mindful of it, because the water can move really quickly across the landscape.
Now, I missed a great show title here. I was piddling around with the rainforest. What did you call it, Kim? Rainforest something wiggly? Some
Did I say like rainforest jungly?
jungly. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. Rainforest jungly. That probably will wind up being the show title. So let's go up the road to. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I just said sweet.
Oh, okay. So let's go up the road to James Adelite in Tulsa. James, what's going to happen there?
Same thing, what Kim said, with a little less wine this evening. Probably looking at just a lot of rain after midnight tonight. We had some elevated storms go up just southeast of Tulsa. They threw down a lot of lightning, but they're not going to be severe. Just a ton of rain. I was very happy to see the 0Z sounding from Norman be capped, strongly capped. So hopefully we can keep good surface air out of the updrafts and just deal with flooding because nobody wants torf. Nobody wants tornado flash flood days.
No, that's not fun. So let's go to John Gordon. John, we're kind of watching the storms up north. Your thoughts on Wisconsin, Iowa, southeast Minnesota?
Yeah. So it's a forecast. The best people in America, the best people on the earth in convection are in Norman, Oklahoma. I totally echo what James has said. In the middle event, you don't yell the word bust. All right. It's a QLCS. You have spinners on the leading edge. Is it a moderate? Well, we'll see. Certainly, I would not want to be on who wants to be on the leading edge of that line? Stand up. I don't.
Not me. No.
So
Um,
I'll just say this for Kentucky. This is the busiest week of the whole year. This is the Derby week. So we have the line tomorrow night. We'll have storms with wind and heavy rain. Jungly, is that the word? Heavy rain, jungly.
jungly. Yes.
Then we got light rain. Thursday, SPC has not looked anybody on Thursday. I think they will. I think Thursday's a problem. There's a lot of wind
Oh boy.
shear places, and if we get cloud cover out of here, it won't be. Someone's going to get hit. And then the Derby looks good. So James, I'll just say I don't like SPC. I've had my issues with them over the years. They listen. They're the best there is. They put out a forecast. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I've often said that they're like our Army Rangers, our Navy SEALs, and you know, all if you look at the X, it's all bust, 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 and uh, calling a bust in the middle of the event is not. It's never a good idea. I've seen a lot of people have to kind of backtrack a little bit and then get the egg off their face after doing that, after everything blows up. So we'll see what happens here. But again, at the moment, again, we're live here at Central Time at 7:07, watching the QLCS come through southeast Minnesota, coming into Rochester. And Jen, let's go to Jen, the email wrangler. I love your I love your title on the Zoom call, the email wrangler.
I had
This
to.
This poor woman has been dealing with an email nightmare, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate your work on this problem. We're going to get it all figured out at some point. But anyway, your thoughts on the whole event that's going on now?
Yeah, I'm with John Gordon. I would not want to be on the leading edge of this. And, it's the dynamics are there. Let's just let it play out. It's such a horrible messaging when we start saying bust and then it just ruins the confidence in what we're doing. Let's just watch it play out. I do want to talk about what happened last night a little bit. That was very interesting. And the PNS just came out from the North Platte office on the tornado event from last night, EF2, from Bingham to Ashby, Nebraska, and it was 2,200 yards. That's the widest that they've ever surveyed at that office. So, did you guys watch that unfold last night with those tornadoes? Yeah, that was quite something. But and then here in my neck of the woods, we have a risk tomorrow. There's a small tornado threat. I think it's going to be primarily wind and hail here as the front gets closer. But I mean, hey, into April, early May, tis the season, huh?
Tis the season indeed. Anything goes for the next few weeks. But Jen, let's bring in our guest before he hangs
Yeah.
up on us and runs. But
I know.
Bill Murray's on a pub crawl tonight.
Yeah.
So Jen is taking over the show. And again, like I said before you joined, I said we have one really good, super good broadcaster here. Actually, two, you and James, but you're good. So go ahead and bring in our guest.
Well, thank you, James. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to our guest tonight. It's Fred Poole, who has a 25-year history in aviation. He is an experienced skydiver with over 700 jumps, a fixed wing pilot with a seaplane rating, and a commercial hot air balloon pilot. His company, Champagne Sunrise, fantastic name, operates out of Meridian, Mississippi, and has safely taken hundreds of passengers on unforgettable balloon rides over the years. Beyond commercial operation, Fred uses Champagne Sunrise for community outreach, including delivering letters to the North Pole for Santa with local schools and donating tethered balloon rides to the local children's museum. And not only that, but during the week, Fred serves as the general manager of PV Electronics, one of the largest manufacturers of musical instruments and professional audio equipment in the world. And you're a board member of the Balloon Federation of America. Fred, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, this is great. Now, the reason you're on is because on our 1000th show, as you know, we gave our fearless leader here a gift to go on a hot air balloon ride. Now, is that going to be you? Are you going to be piloting this?
That's going to be me. I'll be the pilot. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, this is great.
Me and you, Fred. We're going to make this happen. I feel good about this.
I'm excited.
This is great. Yeah. So we're going to do is give the whole lowdown of, what is the experience going to be for James, and we're going to just, pick your brain on your life and, tying weather and hot air ballooning together and everything. So get ready. Everybody's going to hop in here. But first, I want you just to kind of give us the lowdown of your career path. How did you get into aviation from flying seaplanes to hot air balloons?
That's probably my ADD. I got started playing in the band a long time ago, but my passions were all over the place, and started skydiving because I thought that would be a good idea. And that led me to being in planes all the time, going to altitude. And that led me to, well, why don't I figure out how to land the plane that I'm jumping out of? And so started flying planes. Most of my aviation career has just been for fun. I heard about the Natchez balloon race in Mississippi this was about 2010. And my neighbor came and said they were just at this big balloon festival. I said, you're kidding me. They fly hot air balloons in Mississippi. And I thought, wow, well, that would be cool. So I literally sent an email to the Natchez balloon race and asked them if there was an instructor. And lo and behold, an instructor in Meridian, Mississippi, of all places. And that started my my balloon career. So I started off as a private pilot, and then got my commercial pilot rating for hot air balloons, and then started my ride company. So it is it's been an adventure. I love it. I'm still a musician. I love what I do for a living too. So I've managed to find a way to make money doing the things that I love. So that's like you guys. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I want to hop over to the skydiving aspect of it. I have never had an interest in doing skydiving, so convince me why that is a good idea.
It's a lot of fun. Honestly, the first time everybody jumps, you're convinced you're going to die doing it, right? So
yes.
You go around telling all your friends you love them. They're like, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" The first time is terrifying. Most people do a tandem jump the first time, but after about 17 or 18 times, you start thinking, you're looking forward to getting out of the plane rather than being scared to, get out of the plane. So it becomes a different sport. It's very safe. Most of the accidents that happen in skydiving aren't equipment failures anymore. That used to be the case many, many years ago, but now it's, base jumping, which is totally different than skydiving, gives skydiving kind of a bad name. And then guys that are doing things under perfectly good parachutes, they shouldn't be doing. And that generally causes the injuries. So very safe, a lot of fun, and I encourage anybody to at least do it one time. We have some really good drop zones in the South, so there's a lot of safe places to go do it.
So has anyone else on the panel done skydiving? I'm just curious. No.
No, not in the slightest.
Yeah.
We'll set that up, no problem. I can help you with that.
You can help us with that.
Yeah, we're sitting here in awe. I have to ask Fred. Sorry, John. Really quickly, what are the bad things that people do? Like when you're talking about them messing with their equipment, like what is that?
So there's a swoop competition, right? So there are guys that have these very, very small canopies, and they can have a forward speed of up to 80 miles an hour, open. So what they will do is this hook turn maneuver where the canopy faces right at the ground to gain speed, and then they'll pull out at the last minute and see how far they can drag their foot basically across a pond, and it's called swooping. And there's national competitions for doing that. Now, if you're really, really good at it, you might survive. No, I'm kidding. It's not that bad. But if you miscalculate something like that, you can get seriously injured, if not permanently injured. But most of the skydiving, especially tandem, very, very safe and uneventful, except for it's the thrill of a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm not convinced yet. It makes me nervous just to think about it. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine it's a thrill a minute and
Yeah.
just the view you would see and that would just be so cool.
The
So
ability to fly your body for a minute. And I know a minute doesn't seem like a long time, but if you sit there and count to yourself 1, 2, 3, like that, and imagine yourself being able to fly your body forward, backward, upside down, around other people, that's a very, very long time, and it's a lot of fun to be able to fly. So long as you don't forget you're not flying, you're in good shape.
right. So Kim, you had asked earlier in the chat about hot air balloons part of general aviation. So follow up on that one.
Yeah, I just was really interested in all the licensure that has to go on for you to be able to do this, and I'm not sure that people know that background. So, in aviation, there's everything that's like the big bird planes, the commercial aircraft. They have one set of procedures, rules, and things that apply to them, and then there's general aviation, where you do have some baseline licensing that's required, and you do have some regulation flying in the airspace. Anything above pretty close to the ground, it's something like what 80 feet. I might be misquoting that, but there's regulation of air in the places where you fly most craft. So tell us a little bit about that. What is it like to be pursue a licensing in this space?
Yeah, so it's very similar. So I started off as a private fixed wing pilot first, and if you become a fixed wing pilot before a balloon pilot, it's a little bit easier because you don't have to take the written test over and things like that. So airspace is what you already learned flying fixed wing, and like you said, there's various types of airspace. Most of the time, we fly in what's called Class G airspace, and that is a non-controlled area. So there are certain controlled areas we can fly into, like Class D, as long as we're talking to, like the local airport here. I'm in Meridian, Mississippi, right? So there's a local airport that has United flying in and out of it. It's a Class D airspace. I can fly my balloon in there as long as I'm talking to them. I can take off in their airspace as long as I'm talking to them and communicating and making sure everything's all right. And then there's also a Navy space, Naval Air Station here, that's also Class D, but I'm not going to get in their airspace. They have a little bit different attitude about it than the local airport. No, not that it's bad, but they're flying some high speed stuff. So where we fly, we generally stay under 1,000 feet in a balloon. Most of the time, 500 feet or below. AGL, above ground level, is what we're normally talking about. And we fly for about an hour and a half. Now, a hot air balloon can go up into other airspaces, except Class A, which is basically 19,000 feet and up. It's commercial airline operation up there. Balloons are not allowed there, and balloons are not allowed in Class B airspace, which is your busy airports like Atlanta, Heathrow, airports like that. Got to stay clear of that because we don't have ADS-B, which is a self-reporting thing that most planes have, so that other planes can identify where they're at in relation to their own plane. If that makes sense.
Fred, I'm a big fan. I used to work in Jackson. I used to do Sky Parade. Do you remember the old balloon race in Jackson, Sky
Oh,
Parade in the
yeah.
90s?
Sky Parade was huge, well before my time flying, but I know a lot of the guys that actually participated in that. Some of the guys that taught me to fly, actually.
They took me up, and I loved it. For our listeners, talk a little bit about wind. When you cannot fly the hot air balloon,
So
and also when back to sky jumping and parachuting out. What about the wind up there? Is there a magic number where you can't go, or the
Oh,
wind?
absolutely. Absolutely. There's a number where you're actually going backwards under a parachute, right? Because your parachute only has a certain forward speed with the weight that's under it. And if the wind is too much, you can actually be going backwards. And that's a situation you don't want to be in. But as far as hot air ballooning goes, I really have become a micrometeorologist. I know you're all looking at the thunderstorms and the tornadoes and things like that. But when I'm looking at weather, it's very nuanced. So I'm looking at, in the South, we have this thing called the nocturnal jet stream, which is a big deal and can affect how we fly. Ground speeds, I don't want any more than 6 to 8 miles an hour. The operating manual of my balloon says don't take off in any more than 10. But I never want to be on the edge of that, because obviously it's not just surface winds, it's wind gusts. And if you find yourself in a gust, then you're trying to land in a very tight area, that can be complicated. So I'm always watching the wind in the morning. I'm watching the time the wind's going to pick up. I'm worried about the uppers quite a bit, whether the nocturnal jet stream is going to come down or whether it's going to dissipate before it comes down. And I study that a lot. I study all the different models that are available in the area to try to determine which one is most accurate for this area, because some are and some are kind of way off. And then obviously I'll use the VAD winds out of Jackson, which is still not that accurate because it's still a little bit further away, but it's a decent indicator of what the winds are doing aloft. And finally, we do something that most other pilots do not do, is we literally put up what we call a pie ball, which is a pilot's balloon. It's a helium balloon. We will watch it go up and calculate the time and the distance it travels as it ascends to get an idea of what the wind speed is at 200 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, and so on and so forth, and the direction. Because how you steer a balloon, you navigate a balloon. You don't steer it because you can't turn around and take off where you landed from. So we're using wind currents at different altitudes to get different directions. So in the morning, if I notice that the pilot's balloon is got 30 degrees of variance from where it took off on the ground wind is headed this direction, and then 30 degrees to the right when it gets up to 700 feet or 1,000 feet, I know I have about 30 degrees worth of steerage. I can drop down, go left, I can come back up and go right, and I can navigate it to a field where I want to put it down. So very, very dependent on winds.
It's wild that you say pie ball. I bet you how many people listen to WeatherBrains. The Macomb observers back in the day, they used to launch pie balls.
There you go.
So, okay, I'm very impressed by your weather knowledge. How many hot air balloonists have your kind of weather knowledge? What do you think the base level of weather understanding, weather forecasting? You talked about being on the edge. You don't want to be on the edge. How many are as conscious? Because you're taking up James Spann, our leader, our fearless leader. I feel good already knowing you, but how many are at your level, honestly, Fred?
Well, our life depends on it, literally. So we have safety seminars every year, and part of the BFA, which is the Balloon Federation of America, is to instill safety standards for the seminars that balloon pilots go to every year. And part of that requirement is weather. So we always are talking about weather, and we talk about weather in a little bit different sense than a lot of people do. It's very micro meteorology stuff and very, very specific to lower winds and levels. But we spend a lot of time talking about it, because that's why we don't fly in the middle of the day, for instance, because thermal activity, right? And if you have thermal activity, we're just a big buoyant balloon of hot air, right? And the minute that hot air gets into a thermal, it can all of a sudden start rising. Well, you're rising because of the thermal. You're not rising because of you heating the inside of the balloon. So if you stop heating the inside of the balloon, the minute you come out of that thermal, you're going to rocket down somewhat out of control. So you have to be mindful of all these different types of weather and the surfaces you're flying over. For instance, flying over a field when it's heating up, if it's a hay field or a wheat field, it'll act different from a thermal activities than flying over a lake or something that's been cool. We have to worry about fog all the time, whether it's advection fog or orographic winds, coming off of mountains or hills. There's all kinds of winds and weather activity that affects balloon pilots. So we make it a big issue when it comes to safety, and the BFA makes a point of making sure that all safety seminars have a specific part on weather.
Hey, Fred, you touched on what I'd like to ask about, and that's turbulence and the ride and thermals, because as a single engine small plane flyer myself, there are afternoons that 11 a.m. to 2 or 3 p.m. in the summer is just brutal. in sunshine for thermals. And so it makes sense that you wouldn't be doing that in a balloon because you are riding with the air. There's not much you can do. You can't point the nose down or add power
Yeah, that's why
much.
you never see a balloon at that time of the day. And if you see a balloon that, generally my rule of thumb is that if it, I will not take off if it gets to be 2 hours after sunrise. I want to be on the ground 2 hours after sunrise. So we meet generally an hour before the sun even comes up, so we can get an idea of what the wind's doing, where we're going to take off from, so that we can get to a general destination area based on the current winds. Look at the forecast, and one thing that's really important is in the wintertime, because I fly all year around, the nocturnal jet streams in the winter can be a serious issue with wind shear. And that is, a real problem in a balloon, because if you've got 500 feet, it's going 20 knots on the ground, it could be no wind at all. You better know that when you get, because as the balloon goes through that wind shear, it'll even collapse the throat. The throat can close, make it hard to burn, or you burn the balloon itself. So there's a lot of weather phenomenon that you wouldn't think that has something to do with ballooning that really does and can make a huge difference. So we only fly in the very early morning or the very late afternoon. And in the South, I don't fly commercial passengers in the afternoon as a general rule, because as you know, being a pilot, if you are going to fly in the South, you're going to be flying around thunderstorms at some point. There's pop up all over the place. It's an old joke that says if you can't fly around a thunderstorm, you're not going to fly in the South. So, but with a hot air balloon, you've got to remember it's not just the pop up, because thunderstorms create all kind of weather, even 25, 30 miles away when it comes to winds. So as a thunderstorm builds, it will literally pull a balloon into it, right? And as a thunderstorm collapses, even if it's 50 miles away, that outward collapse can get gusts going from, where you'd be perfectly fine at 6 miles an hour. All of a sudden, you've got a 15 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour gust from a thunderstorm that just collapsed 20 miles away, and that's a serious issue. So we really have to be mindful of that, and that's generally why I don't fly in the afternoon.
When do you feel thermals actually start if you're up that early?
About 2 hours after sunrise. So,
Now,
it depends on what time of year it is too. I mean, obviously,
sure.
If you have clouds, you're not going to have as much thermal activity as you do if it's a blue sky day. But the sun can heat up the ground pretty fast. And it can catch you off guard. You can be going along all of a sudden, and if you forget about it for 20 seconds or so, which you shouldn't, all of a sudden you'll be going from a nice and even flight to, dropping like a rock because you were in a thermal and you didn't realize that you were. So that's why we try to stay safe early in the morning, less of that activity, less the chance of anything happening.
Can you tell the difference between thermals off even that early, a plowed field versus grass, something like that?
Not really that early, but you can as the day progresses, it becomes a lot more obvious. So that's why, again, the earlier the better. But we get some of these balloon races, and I'll be in one next weekend. Big balloon race in Foley, Alabama, at the OA. It's when you get into these events where you have 50 to 100 pilots, or the big one out in Albuquerque, which we have 500 balloons in the sky at the same time. Sometimes you don't take off as quickly as you would like to, because they have stage liftoffs, and I got to tell you, I'm sitting around. If I can't get off the ground immediately and early, I start getting a little antsy because I know what's coming, right? So as the day progresses, invariably it's going to be more difficult to fly. It doesn't usually get better. So I like to be off the ground early, and when you get to some of these events, and unfortunately there's pressure to fly at some of these events too. And I always look for the pilots. The BFA has this thing called the safety award, right? Which is a coin that we give out to somebody that demonstrates safe and responsible flight. Well, an example of safe and responsible flight would be not to fly. So if you go to some of these events where a bunch of people are getting pressure to fly, and you see that one poor guy that's a newer pilot, he's sitting there, he's nervous, and he thinks just because these guys with 1,000 hours are flying that he should be flying too, because the event wants him to fly, and he sits out. Well, he's going to get some extra attention and get the safety award from me, because that's the type of people we want in our sport.
Can you go back to something a little different? You flew seaplanes, which are
Yeah,
the most unique plane of all in my mind. I flew C-130s with the Hurricane Plane Hunters down south of you.
I jumped out
So
of a C-130. I
you
did.
did what?
What?
I jumped
What?
C-130. Yeah, yeah, I actually did.
Oh, a different 130, not a okay.
Not a hurricane hunter. No, no, not in a hurricane hurricane hunter. No, it was a civilian C-130 at the World Free Fall Convention. I got a chance to jump out.
Oh,
Anyway,
great. That's amazing.
different story. A lot of fun. That one.
Tell
World
tell our
free fall.
listeners.
Yeah. What?
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 Yeah, the World Free Fall Convention. They used to have it in Rantoul, Illinois, many years ago, but it was in Quincy, Illinois before that. But they kind of got kicked out of Quincy because if you get 5,000 skydivers on an airport for the period of 2 weeks, let's just say it got a little raucous for Quincy, and then it ended up being in Rantoul. But at those events, they would have specialty aircraft come in, and you could jump out of a C-130, or you could jump out of. They even had a jet that you could jump out of, the Paris jet. But anyway, that's a whole different lifetime ago and a completely different story. Back to the seaplanes, right?
Yeah, tell me. Okay, tell our listeners what it's like to fly in a seaplane, to get weather for a seaplane, taking off, landing, even the seas on the water. What's it like?
Okay, so just full disclaimer, I have a seaplane rating. I'm not a great seaplane pilot. Okay, so there's two different things there. I don't have a seaplane, but when I was getting my license, it was very interesting because it was raining the whole weekend when we were flying in the rain, and the ceilings were really low. So, but it was legal. The airspace we were in, it was Class G. There was no problem where we were flying, and we were flying very low patterns. And the pattern on a normal airport's 1,000 feet above wherever altitude that the runway's at. But we were flying like 300 foot, 400 foot patterns, coming in and out of the river. And obviously, you're looking at the wave height on the river, generated obviously by the wind currents over that, and the chop. The direction that you're landing has to be into the wind, to avoid a lot of the problems. Crosswind on a seaplane is more difficult than it would be on a normal runway. And then it's a completely different type of flying, because more backwoods. I had more fun flying a seaplane than any other type of plane I've ever flown, because it was completely different. But yeah, a whole nother skill set. But and a whole different type of weather conditions, because it's all VFR flight. It's visual flight rules, and there's no instrument flying in the seaplanes I was flying in. So it's all depending on what you can see and what the operating parameters of the plane are. And how
What's the magic? The waves are too high. What's that magic number?
It depends on the type of plane you're flying. It's a huge difference where you're flying a pontoon, like a Piper Super Cub on floats, is which I learned to fly in. It's just a small two-seater. Or you're flying like a Grumman Goose, which is the flying boats. Completely different. They can land in 4 or 5 foot swells that you wouldn't dream of trying to land a seaplane in, or like a one with floats. So it's completely different. But yeah, it depends on the plane and your skill level too. I certainly would not give anything a try other than, actually, ironically, glass water is harder to land in. So when it is, because when it's completely clear and there is no wave, depth perception is gone. So when you're coming down, you literally do not want to be looking at the water, because your depth perception is missing, because there's no waves there at all. You're watching your descent rate and you're watching the horizon, and you want to make sure that descent rate doesn't exceed the amount that would, cause to have a bad day. So that was one of the hardest things about learning to fly a seaplane, was glass water landings. That was tough.
Where did you get your weather information for like seaplane stuff? I mean, same
Same kind of places you all do. I mean, I watch you guys on TV. That's how I get my weather information. But and seriously, when I'm flying, I use Windy a lot, because Windy gives you can compare a lot of different forecasts with Windy, and it has some great parameters for cloud bases, which I like to use too, so it'll give me an idea what. But the real thing I use for cloud bases is, temperature minus dew point divided by 4.4 times 1,000 gives you the base of the clouds. That is probably the most useful tool that I consider, looking at the temperature and dew point in the morning, and I can tell you where the clouds will form, if they are going to form that day, and what altitude those clouds will be at. So, that's my own little weather trick, but I mean, you all know that too. But that, and I call flight services. And I encourage every pilot to call flight services before they go fly. 2 reasons. Obviously, the first thing, if you ever have a problem and something happens, what's the first question the FAA is going to ask you? Did you check the weather? And where did you check the weather? Doesn't even matter what happens. That's going to be the first question out of their mouth. So when you call WX Brief, right, 1-800-WX Brief, and you get the forecast, you can ask for an abbreviated forecast or the full forecast. As a balloon pilot, I'll get the abbreviated one because I don't care about all the NOTAMs for all the tower lights being out and that sort of thing. And then I will ask them to give me the VAD winds from Jackson, because that's the closest reporting VAD wind station. And then I get taking that, looking at windy, putting my pie ball up myself to see if the actual winds are close to what they're telling me they are. I get a pretty good idea whether it's flyable or not and how long it's going to be flyable for.
Hey, Fred, real quick for our listeners, windy. We did the thing called the pick of the week. Do you mind describing windy for everyone and our listeners?
Yeah, I use it on my phone and I use it on the computer too. It's windy.com, and it's really good because it has multiple models. I find that the European model is no good for my area. It's kind of good for general, is it going to rain or not, maybe. But when it comes to winds and wind speeds, not so much. The NAM forecast is better, and the GFS forecast is better for winds here locally. Icon is not even anywhere close, and I can't remember what the other ones are, but usually I'm looking at the NAM and GFS forecast, and forgive me if I don't remember what the acronyms mean, but Windy allows you to compare all these different forecasts. And then this time of year, we're likely to get a lot of fog, especially if after it rains. And I've got the cloud-based part of Windy. You can click on there's multiple layers that you can click on the right-hand side, depending on whether you're using the phone or the app. And it'll give you all of that information. And it's very, very handy for pilots. There's another one. One of the things that's really kind of disappointing, though, is we used to use a website called ryancarlton.com. And that was the balloonist Bible when it comes to surface winds and direction. And that was fed by the NOAA RUC forecast, if I'm saying that properly. There was a feed that came from the National Weather Service, and it powered that website. Unfortunately, I guess that they cut that feed off, and now Ryan Carlton is not working anymore. So there is a site called the PPG reports for powered parachutes, powered paragliders, and it has a similar lower level wind forecast on it. But honestly, those are the things that are only good for people like me, because most people don't care what direction the wind's going at 250 feet at 8:30 in the morning, but I certainly do.
So you've got all this stuff to gather, and want to make sure that you can get everybody out, before sunrise. What time do you get up? Like 1 o'clock in the morning? No, I mean, what time do you get going with this whole process of getting going with everything?
I'll tell you what, the last thing I want is have that passenger that shows up 15 minutes early. So if they're showing up 15 minutes early, I'm still gathering my radios and everything. No, but it's a family affair. So we have my family participates. They're the crew. I usually have other pilots come out and help me out in the morning. Kind of how it works. I'm an instructor as well, so I teach people to fly balloons. So if somebody comes out and crews for me, the deal is always, hey, you come crew and help out for free. I'll teach you to fly, and one day you'll be off on your own. So I've graduated 3 more balloon pilots in the area. When I started flying here, it was just me and one other guy, and now we have 6 balloons in Meridian, Mississippi flying. So it's kind of paying it forward and getting people involved in the sport. But we get started at I'm up at 5 o'clock looking at the weather for sure. I'm looking at the weather the night before and 3 days out. So I have to because a lot of my passengers come from the coast or, 3 or 4 hours away. They stay overnight. So I've got to be pretty close to being Johnny on the spot 3 days ahead of time to tell them whether we're going to fly or not, because hotel reservations, the families coming in and all this. You have to. So I'm watching the weather most days of the week. I think the only days I don't watch the weather are Monday and Tuesday. Otherwise, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm watching the weather. So it's a all week thing. And then when we go to it's kind of a relief when we go to these festivals, because a lot of the festivals have their own weather guy, and they have what we call the balloon meister. He's the one that has to make the decisions. I just kind of sit back and see what he's got to say. Of course, sometimes I don't always agree, and I have been known to stay on the ground while other people have flown. But I think that's what you got to do sometimes. If you're not feeling it, no point in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about, fog and visibility and, the wind. What about temperature? I mean, can you fly when it's super cold, or does it matter with all that?
No, that is a great question, and it matters very much. So the size and the volume of the balloon depends on your lift capacity. So how much you can lift depends on how big the balloon is, and the buoyancy difference between the heat of the inside the envelope and the cool air outside the envelope. And in the wintertime, the balloon is going to be much more buoyant. It's going to burn a lot less fuel, right? Because it doesn't take much heat for the balloon to fly at that point, and it's a lot easier on the fabric. When you get in the middle of the summer in Mississippi, all those parameters change. Your lift capacity changes. And by the way, the altitude, your lift capacity at altitude is different than it is on the ground because of the density altitude, right? So you don't have the same lift capacity at 5,000 feet as you would at 200 feet, for instance. So you have to, when in Mississippi, especially when we're talking, it can get to 95 degrees or 85 in the morning, and by the time we're done flying, it could be 90 some degrees. And you have a fully loaded basket. You need to make sure at the intended altitude you're going to fly at, you're within the parameters of the balloon. Because if you over temp the envelope, the inside of it, you can damage the fabric. So there are, for instance, the top of a balloon envelope should be about 220 degrees max. 200, I think the limit's 250 on certain fabrics and 275 on others, depending on the manufacturer. But yeah, it's a great question. The cooler it is, the more the balloon likes it. The more I like to fly. When it gets hot, you remember you've got two burners over my head that are creating 16 million BTU as well. So I got a hat on, and it gets a little hot. If you're 7 foot tall, in the middle of the summer, you might have a tan on your head by the time we're done.
Oh my goodness.
How much fuel does that take? I mean, I'm familiar with like the little 30-pound propane tanks for a home grill.
Yeah, so again, it depends on the size of balloon you're flying. The balloon I fly has 130,000 cubic feet of air in it, which means you could put 130,000 basketballs inside my balloon envelope, and it's 75 feet tall. So I carry roughly 60 gallons of propane on board, and I expect to use maybe 20 on a normal flight. So I always carry extra fuel to at least double the intended time to fly, because you've been around the South, right? There is lots of trees and very few places to land, especially where I'm at in Meridian, Mississippi. So you want to make sure you have adequate fuel to, in case you can't find a suitable landing area immediately. But there are also long jump records, and I think your listeners will find this fascinating too. All of the distance records and are set usually by helium balloons, right, or hydrogen they're using now because helium's too expensive. So you'll see the ones with the sandbags on the side that look like the old-timey balloons that everybody sees in the movies. That's called those are gas balloons, very different from hot air. Those will fly for days. The competitions are for distance, and they'll go across multiple countries in Europe. They could go, take off in Albuquerque, land in Canada, that kind of thing. But they have a competition for hot air balloons as well. So it's called the long jump. And what you do is it's you, a big balloon, and 40 gallons of propane. You can take off the minute the sun comes up, fly all day, and try to land right before sunset. Well, they do this when the jet stream comes down, right? So when the jet streams comes down in the wintertime, they'll go up into Wisconsin, they'll launch where the ground wind is suitable for taking off, get up into the jet stream, and they'll sit in the jet stream all day. And I think the record is just over 800 miles on 40 gallons of propane in one day. So you literally have to coordinate with crew multiple states away just to have somebody to pick you up where you land from. Now, I haven't done that yet. I really have no no desire to do it either, but I know a couple of guys that do that regularly, and it's something that the BFA, which is our board, we kind of sponsor some one of the parts of our division, one of the divisions.
How
Brad,
often
can
do you fall out of range of your chase crew? Or how long? I mean, do you ever land and just have to sit there and, hey, I'm over here?
That's a very good question because excellent question. One of the parts of our sport that most people don't know about is we land in somebody's privately owned land all the time. You know, and our sport exists on the good graces of the landowners, right? So when we land and the chase crew has to come find us, the first thing we have to do is try to find the landowner and get permission to come out and retrieve the balloon. And we're always kind of asking for forgiveness, you know, rather than permission, because we don't exactly know we're going to land there ahead of time, you know, not always. But most times, 99.9% of the time, landowners are great people. And they love to see the balloon. They'll bring their kids out, get pictures, and it's a good thing. But occasionally you get Farmer McNasty Pants, you know, and you try to avoid that particular
show title.
But anyway, to answer your question more broadly, back in the day before GPS, balloon chasing was an art because all you had was maps, and you had to track the balloon visually, look at where it was going, get in front of it, and get an idea by radio communication where the pilot intended to land. Now we use Glimpse and all these other devices where they can actually track with GPS where I'm flying from, but we have radio communication, and I'm very rarely out of radio communication with them. But I'll tell you, there's been a couple of times. I remember once, and I won't make these mistakes again, so I'm kind of telling on myself, but I didn't charge my cell phone. You know, number one, bad, because that's where the GPS is in my cell phone. Radios, communications don't work very well if it's a hilly area. And if you're flying someplace that you're not normally used to flying, well, you know, one thing led to another, and I had to go knock on several doors until I found a charger for my phone so I could call the person that was chasing me, because it wasn't my wife and I didn't have their phone number, you know, memorized. So it took 2 or 3 hours to get out of there. But all balloon pilots have stories like that. But in general, if you have a good crew, they will be in the field you're going to land in before you land there. And my crew is a great crew, so they're usually there.
Let me ask you, can you fly in drizzle?
No. So can you? Yes, sure. You can fly when it's raining. So, but let me tell you what that does to your fabric, right? So absolutely, because when the fabric gets wet, it does two things. It gets heavy. All of a sudden, I mean, the envelope itself is 350 pounds on my balloon. Just the envelope. That's not the basket, the tanks, the passengers, or anything. Just the fabric itself. So when you start adding water to that, it could double the weight of the balloon like that. So if you get caught in rain, which, you know, there have been balloons that have gotten caught in unexpected storms. I remember, you know, I better not even bring it up because they're still bent out of shape about it. But there was a big giant festival one time that all these wonderful special shapes put up, and there was a professional weather guy there as well. And just out of nowhere, this pop-up came and drenched every one of the special shapes, just a downpour. And that didn't go over well with some of the people that owned those very, very expensive balloons. But anyway, the answer is no. Any drizzle, potential rain, we want to avoid it, because also the steam from the fabric heating up is also bad for the fabric. Water, steam, heat, and it's no good. Yeah. All kinds of rain we need to avoid.
I got all kind of questions here.
Okay.
Jen, can I ask a few here?
Of course, you go.
I'm sorry. So How many hot air balloons do you own, Fred? I mean, I assume you own
No,
one or
well,
two. I mean, how many?
well, I own one right now. I just it's brand new.
Okay.
Last we got it in August, but I've had five over my flying career, five different types of balloons. But I can only
What are the like? So let's say you want to go buy one. You can't go to the hot air balloon dealer down the street. I mean, where do you buy these, and how much do they cost? Just out of curiosity.
you can go to the hot air balloon dealer down the street. Yeah, that's
Oh,
absolutely.
really? What?
Yeah,
Go to PV Electronics, right? I mean, you
no,
guys sell those things?
there are about five major manufacturers of hot air balloons. Was one in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This Cameron Balloons, probably one of the oldest, most recognized. There's Firefly Balloons in Georgia, Head Balloons in Georgia as well. A guy by the name of Tarp Head builds them. My balloon's built in the Czech Republic by a company called Kubicek, which is a very popular brand, especially in the South. But there are dealers that literally you can call up and they'll sell you a balloon. But if you're getting started in ballooning, you don't want to buy a brand new balloon because you will invariably put it over a tree, put a hole in it. You'll end up burning it, at some point and put a hole in it. And things are going to happen. And I know everybody says, burn it. What do you mean burn it? What are you talking about hole? But you're going to do something to it where you're not going to be happy about it. So everybody starts off by buying a used balloon. And a used balloon can cost $10,000 to $12,000 for a starter system that would be good for two people and flying on the weekends. So it's not as expensive as you would think. It's probably the cheapest form of aviation, actually. And then, you can spend whatever you want on a balloon. So if you want a ride balloon, $80,000, $90,000 for one that's my size, or up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for the very, very big ones that carry 12 passengers, 14 passengers, and special shapes, which you see at a lot of these festivals. They're extremely expensive too. So it's like any sport or any kind of car. Car's a good example. You can spend $10,000 on a car, or you can spend $300,000 on a car.
Who does the artwork? Yeah, I've seen these festivals with just this incredible artwork and the decorative balloons. Who does all that? That seems pretty challenging.
That's a great question, because when we were coming up with the design for my latest balloon, we went through so many sheets of paper and boxes of crayons, literally, drawing what we wanted the balloon to look like. I even had a contest at the local school. My son goes to a private school here in Meridian, and we just couldn't figure anything out. So I said, why don't we give it to the art class and see what they come up with? And the prize was a hot air balloon ride for the person that came up with. Now, we didn't pick the design that won the contest for the hot air balloon ride. We ended up picking something of our own, but it's pretty challenging to decide on exactly what you like. But when you're doing three-dimensional shapes, that's an entirely different design. Because if you want to make a dinosaur, or if you want to make a commercial balloon like Pepsi can or a Coca-Cola bottle, and a lot of these, remember the Energizer Bunny? One of the biggest balloons we made was the Energizer Bunny, and one of my friends still has that thing. Energizer's not currently flying it, but there's a big giant market for commercial balloons, like Remax, for instance. They have about 40 full-time pilots in their balloon, Remax balloons all over the country. So it's pretty big business.
And what's the fabric, the content of this fabric?
Oh, you guys are smart. That's another excellent question. A lot of great questions from you guys. The fabric it's ripstop nylon, basically. But over the years, manufacturers have learned to coat ripstop nylon to prevent it from being porous. It's kind of a zero porosity ripstop nylon. Now, there's some polyurethane materials that some of the other manufacturers use. They have different characteristics. They keep their color better. They don't run as much. There's advantages to either type of material, but in general, it's a ripstop nylon like you would make a parachute out of, similar material, or a sail.
Okay.
Similar material.
And Jen, I promise I'll stop, Jen, here. Just one more in this set here. So, in fact, I just got an email from the Alabama Jubilee. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one. This is in Decatur, Alabama.
I'll be there at the end of the month. So one of my favorite. Okay. Yeah, I'll be there.
They wanted me to come do a talk. I said, Well, I'm booked this year, but you need to come do this talk because I mean, you're good. I was not expecting you to have this much knowledge about weather, but at a festival like the Alabama Jubilee or the one in Foley that you talked about, the big one down in Foley, who and you said they have people on site providing weather support. Who do they contract with? Is it a local meteorologist or is there a big firm? I mean, just out of curiosity, who handles the on-site weather for these big festivals?
That's another great question. Usually somebody that's not qualified. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to get all sorts.
Oh yeah,
I'm kidding, Ken. I'm kidding. But in any case, as you imagine, it's kind of funny. You'll get a kick out of this because imagine taking this group, right? Or you and your weather geek friends, and you all sit around and argue. Somebody's going to come up with the forecast. Who's going to say who's right in that particular group? So imagine that times 60 or 70 pilots. Each one of them thinks they're weather, right? And then you've got one pilot group that's reading the weather, and everybody else saying, "Nah, I don't think that's right." You know. So the bigger events will hire qualified weather personnel to come out. So they will look to pay somebody that really does know what they're talking about. Even Albuquerque Fiesta brings weather radar on site. So they actually have mobile weather radar that they bring to the field that they use for bad winds and that sort of thing as well, and local extended local coverage. So,
and let me just say, but before I turn back to Jen, I happen to know a meteorologist in charge of the National Weather Service that just retired that might be available for events like this. And I don't know I can't say his name, but his initials are John Gordon. So I'm just saying, John, this could be another career path for you here. Okay.
It really could.
Anytime you need help, Fred, give me a call. I'll be glad to help you.
Yes.
That'd be great, John. We'd love to.
And I'm cheap. I'm very cheap.
No, he's the absolute best. Understand, he's flown the C-130s. He understands everything. He would be amazing at this. So
I'd be glad to help you.
I'm trying to be your publicist, John.
I appreciate
All right, Jen, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
We would love to have it because somebody that really knows what they're talking about. I mean, and at a local level, if y'all are familiar with the South and the areas that were, because the weather is so local. When you were talking on a micro scale, if I know what I'm talking about in Meridian, Mississippi, it does not mean I know what I'm talking about if I'm in some other state. I always listen to the local pilots in the area and follow the guy that's really old, still alive. And, pay attention.
Like some of us on this show here, yeah. Yeah.
Well, and James A's already got your nickname is Hot Air Gordon. So I think that works. That will work.
I have a lot of hot air.
Oh, man. We did get an email in from our friend James Lewis, who has a question about the hot air balloons. And so he asks, is it easier or harder or the same to move the hot air balloon upward depending on surface pressure? Like if you're trying to launch a hot air balloon in the eye of an intense hurricane and the eye was extremely wide and completely stationary so the hurricane wouldn't kill you, would it require less heat? I don't know exactly how a hot air balloon works. So if that makes sense, it's just very interesting question there.
It absolutely makes sense because it's density altitude. So if you have a low pressure, right, that obviously the balloon's going to be more buoyant in a low pressure than it's going to be in a high pressure environment, and you'll have more lift. So absolutely. Not that I am going to try it. If I have a hurricane, I'll be the last person I'll be in it, No. But yeah, great question because it's very much dependent on density altitude, which is, when you take off at 5,000 feet, you have a much different lift capacity than you do if you're taking off at sea level. And this is a consideration you have to have as a pilot, because if I'm flying around in Meridian, Mississippi, I'm like 300 feet above sea level, right? And the density altitude here is very different than it is in Colorado, or when we fly down in, say, Leon, Mexico. There's a big festival in Mexico that starts off at about 4,500 feet. And this is kind of funny, and it plays into what he's talking about, because when you get to Mexico at this particular festival, there's a lake, and the festival's right on the shore of the lake. And they warn all the pilots. They say, don't do a splash and dash if you're not familiar with flying at 4,500, 5,000 feet. And what that means, splash and dash, is you you fly over the lake and you dip your basket in it and then you take off and it makes a little water and it's all fun. Well, if you don't know how to fly in that altitude, that splash and dash turns into a poke and soak, right? Where the whole basket goes and the guy's drenched, and it happens every year. Somebody, because you don't have the burner pressure, right? You don't have the same burner pressure, you don't have the same lift capacity, and you fly out over there, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I miscalculated that, and half the basket's in the water, and the guy's trying to burn the balloon to get out of it. But every year it happens because somebody wasn't paying attention and they weren't familiar with how to fly in that density altitude. So.
Wow, this is so fascinating. There's just so much to it. I do want to circle back and I want to talk a little bit about safety because, again, you are taking up our precious cargo here for his trip. So we want to talk about safety. What are the things that you do? Obviously the weather and making sure everything's there. Then you go, okay, we're going up. What are other safety precautions that you put in place before you take that flight?
Yeah, so that's number one thing, right? Not getting yourself in a bad situation is the best way to be safe. And the most difficult thing to say as a pilot is, we can't go today. Everybody is gung-ho and they want to fly. And sometimes even with a good forecast, you show up the day of the flight, it's just not right. And you just got to say, we got to do it another day. That is the number one thing to keep you safe. But the other things are very common sense. One of the big problems with hot air balloons are power lines, right? So if you read most of the serious incident reports, they've involved some sort of power line. So I personally, I make sure that all my passengers are looking for lines, not just me, and that they're not afraid to tell me that they see one if we're coming into a land so that I can avoid them. Because it's see and avoid. Never landing upwind of power lines so you can't get dragged into them, always landing downwind, making sure you're well clear of the power line coming into a field. Because, when you're talking about, you and I talked about, we talked about wind shear. There's this thing called false lift, which is even more dangerous or can be more dangerous in situations for flying a balloon. Because if you have a layer of wind that is moving rapidly above a layer of calm air, when the top of the balloon hits that layer of wind that's moving quickly, it acts like a wing of a plane. And that wind rushing across the top of the balloon creates lift because of the low pressure. As the wind speeds up off across the top of the balloon, just like on a plane, it'll actually create a little lift, just like the wing of an airplane. And it's that false lift will seem like you don't need to burn, right? And all of a sudden, if you're trying to go over a power line too low and that false lift gives away, the balloon comes down out of that faster moving air, which is causing the lift. It's called false lift. You could drop right into it. So there's all sorts of things that you can do while flying to protect yourself from situations that might be dangerous and that contribute to the safety of your passengers. So it's a combination of a lot of things. But when I teach students, or when we talk about these things in safety seminars, it's drilled into their heads over and over and over so you can avoid any sort of bad situations. That, and you have to be careful of who you're flying, and what conditions your passengers are in. So I could take, like if it's me and John and we're going to go fly and he's a little crazy and it might be a little windy, but I'm good, you're good, and for a little bumpy ride, we may fly in a condition that's a little bit sportier, for the lack of a better word, than I would take an 80-year-old, right? So if I've got grandma on her bucket list and she wants to go for a hot air balloon ride, I'm going to make sure that the conditions I'm taking her in are the utmost favorable for a nice, soft, and easy landing. So just a combination of a bunch of things to be safe. And equipment maintenance. People don't know that a balloon has to be certified every year, just like an aircraft does. Annual inspections, pull tested, make sure the fabric's not porous, make sure the fuel systems are safe. The fuel lines are brand new and everything's in good working order. So safety is my number one priority because there's nothing in the world, no flight that is worth hurting somebody. So we just try to do everything we can to have a good time and avoid getting somebody hurt.
I love that you said it was a bucket list item for some people, like literal bucket. There's a literal bucket. You're in, and you're lifted in your bucket. I was curious about exactly this. The people who you take up, and there could, I mean, that is a variable that can be just as wild as everything you're talking about with the atmosphere. Can be the people who are going up with you. So tell us a little bit about who are your typical clients, and you're talking about the lift being an easier deal when it's colder, and you have the positive buoyancy and all of that. Well, I can't help but think about that being the opposite of human comfort. So, what do you advise people who are going up in these balloons? It might be fairly warm at the surface, or at least palatably warm, and they're going to be going up to something pretty cold. It just what have you observed, and what do you tell people to prepare for?
Well, generally the temperature on the ground is pretty much the same as where we fly because we stay under about 1,000 feet. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's about 3,000 feet. You get 3 degrees of temperature change or something to that degree. So usually it's not noticeable. But I'll tell you what, if you are where you can notice it is if you're flying in the wintertime and the top of the balloon's in a different column of air than the basket, you get a breeze to your face. And sometimes if it's enough of a breeze, it's like turning on the air conditioner. It can be cold, but it's really not that bad. I just tell people to dress like you would for outdoor activities at that time of the year, and you're going to be okay because it really is not that much. Now, the human factor is interesting because I've taken all sorts of interesting people. Some people who are afraid to fly. And it is part of the skill of being a good pilot to know how to distract and calm people that may be apprehensive. So if you see a person getting nervous, you start talking about things other than flying, about themselves, and asking them questions about where they're from. And before you know it, they're completely comfortable and don't even realize they're flying. And because it's kind of a making people comfortable is part of making them safe, because if they are comfortable, they will listen to what you are telling them to do better than if they are very anxious. So if somebody's comfortable with you and you've gotten them to the point where you say, hey, you've got to have your feet flat on the ground, we're going to ready to land, grab the handles, face the direction of flight, and these things. If they're really worried and nervous, they're really probably not digesting everything you say. So I think you kind of have to treat everybody a little bit differently with their own peculiarities. I mean, I'm peculiar, I know. So we have to treat our customers individually based on who they are. I had one of my friends, and this was kind of funny. It wasn't a paid passenger, but one of my friends was terrified of heights, and I always nobody's afraid of heights. This is not a big deal. And she sat on the floor of the basket the whole entire time, didn't look out one time. So that was obviously a very short flight, but the only person I've ever had to freak out. But even then, she was still smiling the whole time, so it wasn't that bad. But I always find that, especially when I was skydiving, I was a tandem instructor for a little while, and I always found that the big tough guys that acted like they were tough, that was the problem. It's the people that were not the problem were the ones that would tell you they're scared and act like they're scared. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a normal response. You're going to be a good passenger because you're not crazy. But anyway, good question.
So
and some people I'm
go
sure
ahead.
are surprised at what they fear or don't fear, because I'm kind of leery being in a tall building and getting up to the window and kind of looking out, but being in a small airplane, love every second of it, looking out the window in a plane. It's just weird.
That's very true, because I don't like standing on the edge of a cliff, right? Unless I have a parachute on. So, and I'm certain everybody's afraid of heights in certain situations. I think that's true of just about everybody. And if you're not, you're probably not all together. So
Gravity always wins.
That's right. Gravity always wins.
So what kind of instrumentation do you have on there? And because you can't predict every single layer of what's going to happen when you're up there. So are you keeping track real time of the different things that you're encountering, and how do you make adjustments? Like if all of a sudden you're like, ooh, things are getting dicey up here. Mid-flight, what do you do?
Maintain calm. No, okay.
Yeah.
But no, that's another very good question. You guys should be pilots. I think that's they seem to go hand in hand a little bit. But very good question. We have an altimeter, obviously, to tell us what altitude we're at. We usually fly AGL, where most planes are flying MSL. AGL is above ground level, MSL sea level, where the planes fly. So, But I usually like to know how far off the ground I am. It's more important than how far off the sea level I am in the airspaces I fly in. We also have a pyrometer, which tells us the temperature at the top of the balloon. They're remote sensors now. They used to be a wire that went down, a physical wire for basically from the top of the balloon down. Those are dangerous because a wire will conduct electricity if it hits power line and can cause all sorts of other problems. So now they're wireless transmitters, and we have an altimeter, right? So you can set the altimeter based on the pressure, right? So just like you would in a plane. I know, James, you said you're a pilot, so if you call up the local automated weather, the AWOS, and it tells you that it's altimeter 29 or 9 or 3, you can actually put that into the device too, and it'll calculate the altitude based on MSL. But the most important things are the climb and descent indicator that we have, tell you how fast you're going up, how fast you're going down. We also have apps that will track the direction at different altitudes, which you alluded to, which is very, very good question. So as I'm coming up, the app at certain altitudes will tell me what the direction of the wind was at that altitude. Now, as an instructor, I teach my students to recognize that by looking just at the ground, looking over the basket, seeing which way the ground moves as you're coming up and down, and looking at the altitude you're at and kind of getting a feel for whether you're going right or left. But in competition, you use computers to do that. So you'll either use an app or literally a laptop that will track direction speed at altitude, so that if you need to go to 056 degrees, you know that dropping down to 275 feet will get you that degree, and then it'll take you that direction. So when you're competing on a national level, it looks like one person in a balloon with a sea of computers in front of them to navigate to the targets. And even now, with the world competitions and the national competitions, you're flying through virtual holes in the sky. They have GPS coordinates and areas to navigate the balloon through, and you'll have GPS loggers on the balloon themselves on your way to the target. So there's multiple targets, and you can navigate a balloon so specifically that the scores are measured in inches from the center of the targets. So it's there's a lot of skill to it, but you can. Lot going on.
That's wild. Okay, what is your bucket list in a bucket? Where have you not done a hot air balloon that you really want to, and where have you that was just the most awesome?
Really, another great questions. I have dreams of retiring someday and flying all over the world, because there are balloon festivals in every country all over the world, and many of them will pay you to come to them. So when we fly to Lyon, they pay for my plane ticket, they pay for the balloon to be shipped there, they provide a truck, a crew, they treat you like a king, and internationally they do that as well. So at some point, if I can maintain my health, because obviously balloon pilots fly under second-class medical requirements, just like commercial pilots of planes. So I have to maintain a medical every year to prove that I'm in good enough shape to go fly. That's specific to the U.S. Some of these other places are not so much, but I hope to be able to do that. So I think some of my best, most memorable flights, believe it or not, were around here. So we have this lake called Okatibbe, and it's an Army Corps of Engineers lake that they made. And there's a whole bunch of swampy areas that are right adjacent to the lake. And I remember some flights where it was just perfect conditions, where you could set the balloon down inside a little valley of the swamp area. It would stop, and then your friend would just fly by, and then you could go. It was just beautiful, beautiful flights. But flying out in New Mexico with 500 balloons was amazing too. The kind of, the joke about flying out there is, well, one of my friends said this to me, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying stuff like this, but he goes, remember, Fred, there's like 560 balloons out there, but about 30 pilots. So keep your head on a swivel. But that's true, because it's important for everybody to know. Even you may have a balloon pilot, but if he's not current and doesn't fly all the time, he might not be the safest person to jump in the basket with, because some of these guys that are older may fly 6 to 10 times a year. And that's okay if you're just doing it for fun, but if you're taking people and charging and having a ride business, you should be flying all the time. And we fly every weekend the weather permits. So, but it's a really good question. I want to fly in Switzerland. I mean, there's some mountain flying over there that they have events in the middle of wintertime. That would be phenomenal. I would love to do that. Red Rock, I haven't been out to Red Rock. I would love to fly there. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. One of my friends was just in Thailand flying balloons over there. So there's a big world to see.
So when you're doing a lot of these events, they have the target competition, right? And I remember at Sky Parade, a lot of the pilots came up to me. What do you think about the win to get the best angle? And what's the most you've ever won? What was the biggest prize? Or just describe to our listeners what it's like for the targets.
So first of all, I'm going to give a disclaimer because when you have a ride balloon and a sport balloon, they're very, very different. So if you are competing, you want an egg-shaped balloon called a racer. They're very, very small. They may be 60,000 cubic feet of volume, and they're designed to go up very, very quickly, 1,000, 1,500 feet a minute, and drop 1,500 feet a minute and be stable so that you can navigate to those various air currents very, very quickly. So if you need to get a quick right, you can zoom up, get that right, drop it back down without drifting too far off the target. The balloon I fly is 130,000 cubic feet, which is pretty big. It's like driving a bus. So when I'm competing, if I place against those guys in racers, right there, that is like bragging rights. That's even if I'm on the scoreboard against those guys. But I will tell you this, my very first race in Decatur, Alabama, that I competed in, I won. It's been all downhill from there. But I usually do pretty good, but I always joke because I'm in it for fun. I'm kind of a competitive person, but safety is more important to me than getting to the target. So sometimes, I will go for a nice safe ride and try, because if you have target fixation, I don't care what you're doing, you can miss a lot of things and it can become dangerous. If all you're thinking about is getting to the target, I've seen it happen plenty of times to pilots that they're so fixated on the target that things going on around them they don't see, and it can get to be not a good situation. And my priority is just taking care of passengers. Not that the pro guys are great pilots and they don't do that. They're very, very safe, but we don't always fly at the national events either.
So Fred, I have a couple of questions. What is the most unique hot air balloon rides? Like, people go up and get engaged, or do people actually go up there and get married? What are some unique experiences?
Yes. So I have done weddings in the balloon, and I have done weddings at the balloon and tons of engagements. So that's a pretty regular thing, engagements. And we do a video of the event while they're doing it. So the guy will usually tell me ahead of time. I'll have GoPros on them and stuff like that, and I'll put a video together and make sure it's memorable. We've even done had the family waiting at the place we do the first flight ceremony afterwards to surprise them after they got engaged. Fortunately, I've never had anybody say no, although I did have a girl once that didn't say anything, and I caught that. I was like, took the ring and put it on, but I don't think she ever did say yes. But that's probably the most common thing. We do a lot of tether events. We do some charity stuff. One of the fun things I really enjoy doing is the letters for Santa Claus at the local school. So all the little kids come out and they write their letters to Santa Claus, and I dress up like an elf, like Santa's helper. And I remember my son was little too, and we had a little bag and they put the things in and we take off and we say we're going to the North Pole. Well, we give the letters back to the parents afterwards so that the parents can act like Santa left them at the house when they drop the presents off and have the cookies on it and stuff like that to fool the kids. Well, it didn't fool my son for very long. It didn't take him long to figure out I didn't go to the North Pole. And he says, "You're not really going to the North Pole, are you?" And I said, "No, I met Santa Claus at the post office and dropped the letters off to him there." So
That's great.
Wasn't buying it, but we have a lot of fun with the balloon. And coming up in a couple of weeks here, we're doing an event for the Shriners here locally to raise money to take care of kids' travel expenses to and from the Shrine Hospitals. So it's a great thing being a part of a community that can do more than just take people for rides.
Yeah, that's so neat. Well, my last question is before I throw it to James Spann for all the additional hard questions is so you're a board member of the Balloon Federation of America. Can you talk a little bit about that group and is this for, any enthusiasts that can join or
Yeah. Yeah, the BFA, if you want to learn about ballooning, that's a great place to go, is our website, the Balloon Federation of America. It is for the betterment of all we do as balloonists. Now, the unfortunate thing about ballooning is with some other types of sport, it's aging out. There are a lot of older balloon pilots. And we want to get younger kids involved. We support a couple of youth camps to get kids involved that they can go to summer camp and learn to fly balloons. We've got a couple of guys that are actually giving away balloons to people that can't afford them, that have interest in aviation, that are learning to fly and getting into the sport. And we lobby the FAA for, right now, the drones are a big challenge. So drone regulations can really adversely affect balloon flight. So we're lobbying for see and avoid technology, making sure balloons are never out of visual sight of the operator of the drone rather is not out of the visual sight of the operator, and things like that make common sense, because we're getting into a situation now where we have ag drones. Instead of crop dusting, you have these big agricultural drones that will go over these fields, and balloon pilots like to land in fields, and if you have a 300-pound agricultural drone zipping up and down a line, that could certainly cause a problem if somebody was trying to land. And not just with balloons, with all sorts of other aircraft as well. So we spent some time lobbying the FAA. There was a big issue with the second-class medical requirements. We helped older pilots work toward getting their medicals. And we just we publish a magazine that comes out, the Balloonist Journal. And that's a pretty cool part of what we do as well. And we represent the different balloon clubs in the area and for the betterment of the sport. And we have a museum we support too, one of the balloon museums.
I got a couple of quick questions. We have to take a break in just a second, but you mentioned this briefly, but on summer evenings down here in the Deep South, random air mass convection. I mean, you can look at the radar, nothing. 5 minutes later, there's a 30,000-foot thunderstorm. How do you deal with that in these evening events when you're flying?
First of all, I try not to fly in the evening. That's why.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
I have been in situations where it looks like it's a gorgeous day, and there's no convective segment over the area, and we go out and fly, and all of a sudden I'm cruising along, and I get a little radio communication that says, code word, because I don't want to scare anybody that's with me, right? And then the code word, look at the radar, right? And in that situation, we land as quickly as we possibly can, get packed up, and get out of there. Now, fortunately, I haven't been in. I got rained on one time. I'll confess. And I was flying along, and it was a beautiful afternoon. It didn't seem like there was a cloud in the sky, and all of a sudden, I get a radio call that says it's raining, and I said, "No, you're joking." Because you're in the balloon. It's like a big umbrella. You don't know it's raining, right?
Right.
So I'm just flying along, dumb and happy, and I'm like, "No, it's raining," and sure enough. It started raining, so I found the first spot I could land very, very quickly and started to get packed up, and whoosh, it came down, wet balloon, not good, very heavy. I was like a drowned rat, but anyway, you learn your lesson pretty quickly, but that did come out of nowhere, so you just have to act fast, do what you need to do to put it on the ground as quickly as possible, but that was only in all of my years of flying. That has only happened to me one time. And it was a very strange weather event. It really was literally, there were no clouds, and all of a sudden, cloud form, rain right on top of my head. It was over a lake, too, by the way. And you weather guys would probably tell me whether that had something to do with it or not. But it was certainly, must have been some moisture coming up off the lake or something that formed the cloud really quick. And who knows? But yeah, I got rained.
And one more question about the communication. What kind of radio gear do you carry up there? I'm a ham radio guy. I'm an RF guy, and it's curious to me how you're communicating with your ground crew.
Usually it's VHF, like 5-watt radios. I use there are certain power ratings you have to be licensed for. as you know, being a ham guy. But the aviation has changed in general. You used to have a radio license for my fixed wing, and now that's just that's standard. It used to be what was Aero. You had to have your airworthiness certificate, your radio license, your operations manual, and these are the things you had in order to take off with, right? And the radio license was one of them, but that's kind of a thing of the past now. It's kind of assumed that if you have an aircraft, you have the automatic radio license to be able to operate the equipment that's in it. We use these little handheld 5-watt ones that you can get on Amazon. They work fairly well. I haven't had any problem with them. We usually have 2 or 3 in the different chase vehicles. And then obviously we're always most of the time we're in cell phone range. So if you do have a problem, because we're under 3,000 feet, and under 3,000 feet, you can get a cell phone signal.
Right.
And that's kind of the backup. We'll use a cell phone or text somebody if if we need to.
So we fly with you out of Meridian. Where does this happen? Key Field or NAS? Where do you fly from there?
Certainly not NAS. they get a little.
They probably wouldn't be happy with that. No.
Well, actually, I do a tether event out at the Naval Air Base. But the funny thing about it was the paperwork I had to go to be able to tether. Tether is just getting on the ropes and going up and down 30 feet. You're not even really flying. I had to get a landing permit for NAS Meridian to tether my balloon.
Wow.
There. All sorts
Wow.
of papers. But nice guys out there. I love the air base, but we stay well clear of NAS Meridian. But Key Tower, the Key Field over at in Meridian, they have been bugging me to land there for years. Because every morning I talk to the tower and I tell them what we're doing and where we're going to be at, even though I don't have to, because the airspace I'm flying in, I don't have to communicate with them unless I'm getting close to the Class D airspace where they're at. And they always joke, well, why don't you come here and land? But I haven't done that because if you miss, you'd have to be a pretty bad pilot to miss the airport because it's huge. But if something happened, beyond it is nothing but swamp. You would have a very bad day if you missed it. So I don't generally fly that way. But how it works is wake up in the morning and we have designated takeoff spots based on the direction of the wind that get us to the most likely areas for landing. So there's like, I call it a triangle when I teach my students to fly in Meridian that is suitable landing areas. It's a lot of open spaces. It's pretty easy to land. And we always aim for that area, and we have takeoff spots that'll get us there based on the conditions of the day.
So do you launch out of PV or at the parking lot at PV there? I mean,
I have once actually. Yes, I have. I've launched
yeah.
over by the warehouse, and I have put the balloon up in the parking lot of corporate headquarters before. But we have a lot of. All you have to do is have permission to take off from where you're taking off from. So we can take off our own lot next door as long as you have permission, like a helicopter. You can take off and land wherever you want.
I think this is too cool. Fred runs PV Electronics in Meridian, which is too stinking cool. I mean, that's like outstanding. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, you've got this intersection of music and aviation here, which is just too cool, and weather. So, wow. All right. So Fred, we have to take a break, and we're going to, Tony, by the way, could not do his astronomy segment this week. So we're going to hear from Jen this week in Tornado History. We will have our quick email segment. We're going to bring in Bruce Jones of Midland Radio, and then everybody's going to have a pick of the week. This is something weather related that's cool. We'll put up on the WeatherBrains website. But at the moment, we're going to pause and get Jen's This Week in Tornado History. We'll come right back as WeatherBrains rolls along.
This week in tornado history, an EF4 struck Louisville, Mississippi on April 28, 2014. It was part of a larger outbreak that spanned from April 27th through the 30th. The twister developed in rural northeastern Leake County, initially damaging trees as it tracked off to the northeast. By the time it neared the Winston County line, the tornado exploded in strength. Southwest of Louisville, it tore through homes, metal buildings, and chicken farms, leaving behind fields of splintered debris. Several structures were reduced to their foundations, and in some areas, trees were stripped bare and bark was scoured from their trunks. The tornado barreled straight into the south side of Louisville along Highway 15. Industrial buildings crumbled, homes and apartments were shredded, and some were wiped completely clean from their slabs. The Winston Medical Center took a direct hit and was so heavily damaged it couldn't be used. Continuing through the east side of town, the storm ripped across neighborhoods and farmland, tossing vehicles and uprooting thousands of trees. Along McCullough Road, well-built homes were torn apart, and near Louisville-Brooksville Road, 2 sturdy houses were mangled beyond recognition. The tornado lifted after traveling nearly 34 miles. Tragically, 10 people were killed, and there were 84 injuries.
Hey, just maybe we have an email or two this week.
So I've been holding on to this email since March 24th, and I honestly can't remember if I've asked this question before because my Wrangler skills have been stretched to the limit, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. And it is from our friend James Lewis again, who sent the earlier note with the hot air balloon question. But this was back again March 24th, and talking about using the use of severe weather analogs. Um, is first of all, I'm just interested too because I don't remember this being a thing. Is this a new thing, or maybe I'm just hearing a lot more of it now? But this was when the high risk was added again about a month or so ago. There was a lot of the usual. This will be another super outbreak like in 2011. One thing that was brought up a lot is that apparently at some point a top analog was April 27th. And so his question is, how do you actually apply analogs to a severe weather forecast? And if the top analog is something that you really don't think is going to happen that day, what does that tell you? Are there certain analog models, question mark, you prefer above others, and how do those work? So who wants to tackle that? Taking an event and going, it's like this.
I'll start off. If you want to go, James, or you want me to go?
Well, I was just going to point out, I'll let you get into this a little bit in more depth, but I know there's two ways that people use analogs. There's the familiar analog where, and I know James has heard this too, is this going to be as bad as April 27th, where people use a familiar event to gauge perception of risk for themselves personally. And then there's the scientific use of the analog where, hey, these charts match up to this day. So take it away, John.
I'll just start off this and say that analogs are a tool. All right. Meteorologists look at a lot of different parameters and tools. And the analogs should be used later in the process after you've looked at everything else and you've analyzed the data and understanding the atmosphere. You saw what's going on in Minnesota tonight. They looked at a lot of things. Analogs was one of them. And once you get to the final part where you think there's a severe weather episode, you think the probability of tornadoes there, and then you look at the analogs. The SIPs is one thing I like from St. Louis University. By the way, James Spann, I wanted to mention this. I don't think we've mentioned this. St. Louis University is losing their
Going away.
meteorology
It's
program.
going away. Yeah, it's going
So
away. Yeah,
that's
but
horrible.
what happens to the SIPS analog site? Does it go away too?
John Gagan, if you're listening, up the Sioux up in Milwaukee, he says he's working on it with Dr. Chuck Graves. If you're listening, to save the SIPs, we should have little shirts, save the SIPs. But anyway, you look at all these parameters and say, is it most similar to this? What's the highest end? What's the most probable? It gives you percentages of all the different EF levels. It's a great tool. And it's just like any other tool. If you look at just one thing in severe weather forecasting and hang your head on it, you will fall down greatly, like Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, and I think John's exactly right. You've got this toolbox, and you have to understand that you've got multiple tools in the toolbox, and they all serve different purposes. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and you have to understand all of them. But having said that, analogs are very useful. One thing about being as old as I am is the fact that I've lived through a lot of these events. And I'll see, like, I'll pull up SIPs and you can see the top 10 analogs, and you'll see a couple of events in there that catch my eyes. And then you can go back usually to the events and look at the upper air charts and look at the surface charts and kind of see where the comparison is and see what happens. But like John says, Jen, it's just a tool, and it's a good tool. It's a good tool to have. And I sure hope, John, that the SIPs, save the SIPs. We need a shirt. Save the SIPs. That's a very useful site.
Anyone from St. Louis University, email WeatherBrains, the Wrangler.
Yeah.
Email the
Yeah,
Wrangler and tell us what's going on.
Yeah, we'll get you on the show. We'd love to get you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jim, for your email. You're the email of the week. Speaking of email, email at weatherbrains.com is currently working where we can actually see that it is you who is sending the email so we can see your email address. We're having to do a few different things, but I think we've got it back into a good flow here, and we'll just keep proceeding forward. So please send us your emails, your questions, your guest suggestions, and what have you. Email at weatherbrains.com.
And John wants an international email. So if you're, and
Yes.
we've got a lot of folks that listen in Australia. We've had some that listen in South America. I've got a couple from Brazil. So anyway, John is a new regular here, and he would love to hear from you. So if you've not sent us a note in a while, if you are an international listener or viewer, send us an email. That will make John's heart jump for joy. Jump for
Yeah,
joy.
Germany last
So
week, James. Germany.
yeah. There you go. There you go. So and again, our email situation is thanks to the hard work of this amazing woman. We now have email flowing again. So just send us a note and we will see it. Email at weatherbrains.com. Let's bring in Bruce Jones. Bruce, are you home or on the road here? I've not seen your video here. Where are you this week?
I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. You know, it has
Okay,
an
just
extra
south
R
of
in there.
Nashville. Yeah.
Yep.
What's the function there?
Tennessee Emergency Management Association
TEMA.
starts tomorrow
TEMA.
morning. Yep.
Okay.
And so, it's kind of interesting between Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas and Mississippi. I mean, we've had the last 5 years or so, just a bodacious amount of severe weather in this area. I mean, flooding, tornadoes, on and on.
And obviously, tonight as we speak, we've got active weather stretched out from Texas to the Great Lakes. And having a weather radio is critical. And again, I'm in schools every day, every single day. And I show a weather radio from Midland everywhere I go. And I will ask the kids, how many of you have one of these little white radios in your house? And it's fascinating, Bruce, to watch the response. On occasion, I'll have a school where over 50% of the kids raise their hand. But on occasion, I will have a school where maybe 2 out of 50 kids raise their hand. I'm thinking, what is this? Where have we gone wrong here in messaging? And it's some obviously have them, but a lot of people don't. And it's critical. It's an absolutely critical part of getting the warning. It's the baseline for every home and every business. So we can't stress enough the importance of this.
It is. And thanks for saying that, James. I was talking to someone the other day. NOAA Weather Radio is America's official federal warning system. And I'm like, why isn't there one of these in every single federal building all across the nation? They should have it, first of all. Every federal building should have one of these things. It's their system. But, the National Weather Service runs this network of 1,035, 1,036 transmitters. James, that's the largest radio network on the planet right there. I don't think Cumulus owns 1,000 transmitters. I can't think of anybody.
And the coverage is excellent. It is excellent. And what we have to remind people, this has nothing to do with a cellular radio network. Nothing. This is good, old school, RF, high power transmitters that gets the nooks and the crannies. It covers like the dew. And so when your phone becomes a brick, and let me tell you what, during a tornado emergency, there is a good chance your fancy iPhone, Samsung, PQ, Pro Max, 87,000 will become a brick. It does nothing. It's not connected to the internet or anything. And you got a problem. But that weather radio will keep working, Bruce. It will keep working.
That's right. And then a lot of the NOAA weather radio transmitters, the vast majority of them have a backup generator on site. So even if the electricity out to the transmitter site were to go out, that transmitter can still operate. So it's a wonderful system. And for those of you who are listening and you're WeatherBrains fans and WeatherBrains listeners, we know that you know, but please spread the word about the utility of these life-saving devices. And they're not that expensive. And once you buy one, the service is free. It's not like it's a monthly subscription. This is a free broadcast from the National Weather Service, and it comes from your local National Weather Service office. So you're getting the warnings direct from the source instantaneously via a radio broadcast, and radio still works. So if you are a fan of WeatherBrains, there's a special offer for you. We have a promo code that gives you 25% off the purchase of a weather radio at midlandusa.com. If you're ready, here's the promo code. I'll give it to you. It's SPAN25, SPANN25. That SPAN25 promo code is the one you type in at midlandusa.com. And when you do that, you get 25% off all the weather products and accessories. We have a limit of 5 per customer, 5 per credit card, but it's a great offer, 25% off. Mother's Day is coming up. Father's Day is coming up. We have birthdays every year. We have Christmas every year. People get married. People have a baby shower. There are lots of opportunities for you to gift a weather radio to someone you love and care for, because it's one of those gifts that could end up one day saving a life. And what better things can you do with your money than to save a life? Midlandusa.com is the website, and the promo code is SPAN25, SPANN25.
And if you're in real estate, goodness gracious, wouldn't that be great for you've got a new homeowner, they've closed on a new home, give them a weather radio. I think that's a marvelous thing for new homeowners. I see so many people that are moving into where we are here, and they're coming from, say, Seattle, or they're coming from Phoenix, where they don't deal with tornadoes, and they have so many questions. And I always tell them the first thing you have to do is get the warning. And the right way to do that is to start with that weather radio. And so again, midlandusa.com, promo code SPANN25. All right, so we're going to morph into picks of the week. This is where we're going to go around the horn. Everybody's going to share something that is weather related. This can be a website, data source, hardware, software, anything remotely related to weather. And Fred, we're going to pick you last to give you time to come up with a good one. So let's go to James Adelot. I'd like to start with James because he has the 9 o'clock news coming up soon. So James, what's on your mind this week?
Yeah, two things. First, my pick of the week is TDS, QLCS TDS about an hour ago in western Wisconsin. That was about 70 miles east of Minneapolis, St. Paul. The second thing to note right now is a developing supercell near Altus, Oklahoma, that Norman just put a TOR, just put a tornado warning out for. There are probably 1,000 spotters within 5 miles of this thing right now, so I'm sure they have eyes on it. And but the low level still look a little low magnitude yet, but it's really close to the Frederick radar too. So I'm getting a really good view of that. Look at that thing.
Yeah, the reflectivity sure looks suspicious. I'll say that. And in this environment, spinny. You have to be really, very, very, very spinny. Okay, good deal. And again, Rick Smith, who's normally on the show with us, he's obviously at work in Norman. So let's go over to Kim. Kim, what's your pick of the week? What you got for us?
Well, I wish I had something that was more thought-provoking, but honestly, with the conversation this week, I am opting for Free Fallin' by Tom Petty, which I hope is the theme song for that free falling convention that you all do. Because in the many things that have been Fred's life, I really wish Neil was here, because I feel like you guys could really have been buddies in the realm of doing all the random life things. But anyway, I thought that was a really apropos theme song for that activity.
The World Free Fall Convention featuring free falling. Yes, indeed. That's outstanding. All right, Jen, what's your pick of the week?
So my pick of the week is a post on X from the Otis Project, which is the observations of tornadoes by UAV systems. And they were out yesterday in Nebraska. I know they're out again today, but it's just a neat project that they're working on here, flying drones into tornadoes. So you can see on the post that I'm giving you, flying into the tornado north of Hyannis, Nebraska, and you can actually see the drone going that way. And then Eric Fox, who is the lead chaser for the group, also posted a photo underneath that. Successful day for Project Otis, more to come in 2025. And it's actually a shot of the tornado from the drone. It's cool. And I'm partial to it because Nelson, who is one of my chipmunks, is one of the lead guys with this. He works with this project and with his brother, who is a drone champion. So it's really cool. I'm following it very closely and all of his work. So just hoping for success with this as they are out this year.
Excellent. And again, we'll put all this on weatherbrains.com. John Gordon, I know you got something good. You always do.
Thanks, James. So, Fred, it was great to have you tonight, by the way. Awesome. So, I want to talk about the vertical wind profile, the VWPs. So, I put in two links in there. One is a paper that John Hart and Jared Geyer wrote several years ago, examination of 88D VWP data and approximation of strong tornadoes. So, I looked at 48 tornadoes, EF3s or EF5s, 48 of them between 2008 and 11, including the Tuscaloosa event, and they looked at the VWP and how important it is in proximity to strong tornadoes. Great paper. And then there's a link which the Center Weather Support Units put together of taking the current VWP off the 88D NexRad. You get to look at it, and they use the RAP model and go out in time. And then below is amazing. They got the sweat index, the LI, the K index, the total totals, the old school severe weather stuff on one site. It's really cool. And if you want to learn more about weather and understanding tornadoes and understanding low level winds for balloon pilots, that's a really good resource. You just changed the location. It's awesome.
That's outstanding. Oh, man. Total totals, K index. That's my old school, my school. I came up with that stuff. Oh boy, that's good stuff.
Showalter.
So quickly, mine, yeah, Showalter index, exactly. But yeah, my pick, it's going to be a paper involving lightning and the intensification of landfalling hurricanes and lightning output. And this is, I think it came out of NSSL. But anyway, it's a fascinating paper. I just kind of glanced at it today. But before you know it, hurricane season is going to be here. We're about a month away from that. So again, we'll put a link to that paper using lightning to monitor the extreme impacts of landfalling hurricanes. All right, Bruce, what you got?
Oh, we've got an anniversary today. On this date in 2002, the La Plata, Maryland tornado. And I'm sorry to laugh, but my link is to a Tim Marshall paper. So for those of you who don't know, they had this tornado in La Plata, Maryland, and they rated it as an EF5 because these John's doing the countdown. It's like Casey Kasem counting them down here. So they had oh gosh, it's EF5, because these homes were just decimated. And then God bless him, Tim Marshall goes in there and he's like, well, now wait, you said this home was EF5, but the mailbox is still out there in the front yard and the bushes right by the side are hardly even shaken. And they come to find out that these homes were so poorly built. And not only that, Tim Marshall on this paper notes that the water tower that got blown down in town was only bolted with one bolt to each of the 4 feet. So here we have La Plata, Maryland apparently has a history. Maybe they take great pride in shoddy workmanship or something. But it was Tim Marshall who had to go in there and point out the fact that, an EF5 is not just based on the strength of the tornado, but you've also got the quality of the home building and the other structures.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's good old Tim.
Yeah.
All right. So Fred, but before your pick of the week, you do not have a Lauderdale County, Mississippi accent. Where'd you grow up out of curiosity?
Guilty as charged. I'm from Michigan. In fact, I lived in Michigan for most of my young adult life and then moved to Illinois, which we were kind of in the middle of, partially in Tornado Alley. I was in southern Illinois a little bit there, and then moved down to Meridian, Mississippi to take the job with PV Electronics down here for the last 19 years or so. But yeah, guilty as charged. I'm a Michigander.
Okay, I was just curious. I mean, but Peavy is just legendary. I mean, the music people. In other words, you're kind of a big deal on both the aviation side and the music side. So it's great to have you on the show. But give us something good. This can be anything weather related. So we know you've got a good pick of the week. So go.
Well, obviously. Oh, by the way, Bruce, I have some Midland radios, so feel good about that too. So,
Good for you.
that's right. I'm from Midland, Michigan, so that all just comes together. But my pick of the week is obvious. It's the WeatherBrains podcast. It's amazing. What a great group of guys. A lot of fun. I don't think I've met another group of individuals that have made the weather so much fun and a great conversation. And it's really good to hear some of y'all get enthusiastic about the kind of weather that we look at, because it's not the weather that you see on the news when the warnings come on and the tornadoes are there, but it's equally as important to me because lives depend on it. And I think this group just really kind of had some great questions, latched right onto that and how important it was. And I loved it. Thank you so much for having me here. And I would really love to involve John if you want to do some of these balloon events, or if you all want to come out. I can't wait to fly, James. We're going to set it up soon and go fly, and we can talk about some of this from the sky. We'll do some video of it and talk about it while we can actually do the weather real time while we're out there that morning putting up the pie balls and analyzing. That'd be a lot of fun too.
No, after this show, I feel good with you in charge. I wasn't sure what Murray got me into here, but now I feel really good about this. But let's say somebody wants to get in touch with you for whatever reason. Are you on social media, or what's the way to
ChampagneSunrise.net. Check it out. And also Champagne Sunrise on Facebook, also Instagram. 5fly5. It's Fred Poole on Instagram as well. But yeah, you can see what the flights look like. I put videos of every flight I've got up online, and we have a lot of fun. So we book up a couple months out, though. So if somebody wants to book a flight, especially this time of year, people get excited about flying, and we usually stay pretty busy. So ChampagneSunrise.net. Again, I thank you for helping us out. And if you want to learn more about ballooning, the BFA, Balloon Federation of America, please check out that website as well. It's a great resource for everything we do in the balloon community.
Indeed. Well, this has been a great show. Again, Fred, thank you so much. And if you're new here, we are on the air every Monday night, typically at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern. And you can watch the video version on YouTube, youtube.com/weatherbrains. But we know most of you listen to the produced audio podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, we have working email now, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Email at weatherbrains.com. And don't forget, for those of you that listen internationally, we would love to hear from you, especially to make John Gordon's heart warm. So however you watch, listen, thank you. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, and God bless. This was a great show. Wow.
Awesome.
This was good.
Thank you so much, Fred.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks, Fred.
Fred, you were great.